What is up, guys? Rick. Nice, normal intro, not weird for once. Kackis here. Thank you so much for stopping by. And today, swords are in right now in Destiny 2, and that's because of some brand new equipment and gear they got in the new Season of Arrivals. So we're going to be showcasing how to get the absolute maximum damage out of your swords, because they are utilized in a ton of different boss phases. Seriously, one phasing Riven was already more than possible, in fact easy, before this season, and it just got a whole lot better. So bosses will cower before you with this strategies. So let's get started. So, the first thing you're absolutely going to need is some advanced GG focus, baby! Make the most of those real gamer hours! But seriously, what you are really going to need first is a good sword. So what kind of things are you looking for when you want a maximum DPS sword? Well, thankfully, this season added some really cool brand new swords with some really cool intrinsic abilities due to some different frames. The caster sword is able to shoot a projectile, which gives you, again, a huge degree of versatility that you otherwise wouldn't have with a normal sword. The Season's Pass sword lets you spin around and deal with adds a lot easier as well in 360 degrees around you. But that stuff is all involved around the heavy attack, and that is generally not the best when it comes for damage output. You are really just chaining together light attacks constantly in a damage phase. So keep that in mind when looking for a sword. But you're really going to want, in the very first slot, Jagged Edge. Out of all the blades, that is going to give you the biggest boost to your impact. So, moving on from there, the guard doesn't matter as much for damage, obviously, and then we have the first perk slot. Now, the first perk slot is generally dedicated into perks that get your ammo back and get stuff back for you. They don't really involve impact, so I have Relentless Strikes here. Again, I'm planning on light attacking, so that's fantastic. Moving on to the last perk slot, this is really important. This is where you want to get a damage increasing perk. So, Whirlwind Blade, which is what I have on right now, is going to result in the most significant damage increase of all of the different perks in this slot for any sword. And we can see that in action right here. The first attack does 10,158 damage, and by the time I have Whirlwind's Blade times 5, it deals 13,206 damage. That is a 30% damage increase, so it very much beats out stuff like Vorpal Weapon, just introduced onto swords. That's only going to be a 15% damage boost, and even then only when you're fighting bosses. But the downside of Whirlwind's Blade is that I have to ramp it up. It doesn't start with a 30% damage boost, but it does give you overall more damage in the long run and pairs very well with Relentless Strikes. Now, that isn't to say that Vorpal Weapon is a bad choice. It's actually better if you're planning on heavy attacking a lot and not just doing constant light attacks. Let's not forget Surrounded is an excellent choice here as well for swords. It also lets you put on Surrounded Spec as a mod, so don't forget that either. But just something to increase the damage at this final perk slot, and then you're also looking for an Impact Masterwork. That's right, swords can get a Masterwork that just increases their damage outright, so go for that. The mod, as I mentioned with Surrounded Spec, matters too. If you're fighting Taken, and especially this season, Taken Spec is fantastic, but normally you'll throw on a Major Spec or a Boss Spec. Okay, so that should cover what you're looking for in a sword, but what about the rest of your gear? Well, most importantly, and just introduced this season, we have a new mod, Lucent Blade. So what this does is that while charged with light, dealing damage with a sword gives you bonus sword damage for 5 seconds, consuming 1 stack of charged with light. And we can see that in action right here. I become charged with light by picking up this Orb of Light from a Masterwork weapon because I have that mod. Then, because I'm charged with light, I go over to the Ogre. Remember, the very first attack is going to do the exact same, like normal damage, because it then triggers a new bonus called Keened that you can see on the left side of your screen. Once that's triggered, you have 5 seconds of, as you can see, 35% damage increase between the Whirlwind Blade times 5 with Keened active versus when it's not active. So that is a significant damage bonus. But of course, damage bonuses stack and interact very, very weirdly with one another in Destiny 2. So the first question is, does this have a positive interaction? Does it stack with other buffs? Well, I tried to get it to work with my Well of Radiance, and as you can see, if I normally pop Well of Radiance, yeah, I do more damage, of course, than the base damage, but when I do have the Keened buff, it is clearly not stacking. Like, I'm not getting above the 17,000 damage. In fact, it may even be worse, going down to a 30% damage bonus from the Well and negating the 35% possible damage because I wasn't getting as high of numbers here. So it does not stack with other buffs. It is your buff, Keened. So it replaces all other buffs. If you're in a Well, if you're getting Weapons of Light, all of that stuff, it won't work with that. But, of course, we then have debuffs, and as you can see, when I quickly swap to a tractor cannon, shoot, get the debuff, and then swap to a sword, start attacking, get the Keened bonus, it is working. You can see that the numbers are affected by the debuff because they're precision numbers for a sword, so that's how you know, and they're doing way more damage than they would otherwise do. So just like how if you're doing a hardcore raid damage phase, you can use Well of Light and a debuff from a tether, whatever, to get the absolute maximum damage, here you can use Keened and then a debuff to get the absolute maximum damage. The important part is that normally you'd have to have multiple people, one person doing a buff, one person doing a debuff, and that's why I mentioned the raid team scenario. But you don't always have a raid team, you're off doing your own thing 90% of the time, so Keened can act as the buff, and importantly, the debuff can come with the brand new, well, returning Seasonal Artifact Mod, Oppressive Darkness. This makes it so that all you need to do is throw a void grenade at an enemy and it's going to debuff them. So, just like shooting tractor, it's going to have that same effect where you're getting precision numbers and then you're getting the buff from the Lucent Blade and you are just stacking damage upon damage. And as you can see from some of the background gameplay, the damage numbers you get are absurd. I'm taking down the double nightmares so fast. I'm taking down huge bosses after boss extremely quickly. So if you can achieve this combo, activate Lucent Blade, get that Keened buff, while also debuffing an enemy, oh my goodness, you make those contact public events a joke. Like, you are just ripping through guys. All these people are concerned about, oh no, it's an unstoppable champion, I need to stun it. No, you don't. Roll on up with your max damage sword build and just roll over that champion. No stun required, let me tell you. And you'll see that background gameplay. Champions fall just like normal enemies. You never have to do any of the weird ammo types with them. You're just dealing way too much damage to care. So, let's take a look at a build that makes the most of these different combinations. And although this is going to be a Warlock build, I'll mention how it can easily transfer to other classes. So, obviously, first things first, an arc armor piece with the Lucent Blade Armor mod. You do want to activate its secondary perk, where greatly increases the charge rate of your equipped swords by simply putting on another arc mod. This is going to let you, for example, if you're using a caster sword, which I am, use its heavy attack way more often, and that's just a pure benefit. Then you absolutely need that Oppressive Darkness mod. And because you want to be utilizing that as much as possible, we're then going to be focusing on how to get as many grenades as possible. So, what we have here is basically my ultimate grenade build from last season, but we have the Nezarec Sin as our exotic. Void damage kills increase ability energy recharge, so getting kills with void grenades gives you more void grenades, very good. Then obviously we need some weapons with the Demolitionist perk, and if we do have a void weapon with Demolitionist like we do here with the Seventh Seraph sidearm, works really well with Nezarec's Sin. We then have the bottom tree Voidwalker subclass because the Devour perk, when it's active, it's going to give us a ton more grenade energy. You can activate Devour, get 2 kills with a weapon that has Demolitionist, and you'll get your grenade back. It is ridiculous. So you can throw a ton of different grenades. Now, for other classes, if you're playing the Titan, using something like the Armamentarium to simply give you 2 grenades combined with a bunch of discipline mods is probably good enough. For the Hunter, you do have stuff like the Frosties that gives you your grenade back a lot more often. But really, as long as you have a good weapon with Demolitionist, you have a Void subclass, then you have an exotic that has to do with recharging your abilities, and a bunch of discipline stat, you will be fine in being able to exploit Oppressive Darkness and throw grenades every time you do see a boss. And then with your sword out, remember, when you have your sword out, you can throw grenades at the same time. So whip your sword out, yeet a grenade on the ground, and go in with your charged light. Now let's talk a little bit about getting charged with light. The only perk you absolutely really need is going to be taking charge. Become charged with light by picking up orbs of light. Super easy to activate. There's always orbs everywhere, and it counts, as I said earlier, masterwork weapon orb, so make sure you have at least one masterwork weapon. If your sword is masterwork, that helps as well. They're just really easy to come by. And you can also sneak in another easy one, is going to be shield break charge, where if you break a shield of the matching element, you become charged as well. Only costs one, but you really want to make sure that Lucent Blade is your only like yellow mod, the only mod that uses charged with light. If you have something like high energy fire on as well, you're going to be using all your charges and not save them for your sword. Like, the important thing about Lucent Blade is it only activates when you deal sword damage, so you'll get charged. You can have up to ×2 charges of light just natively, and that should be more than enough because it'll only use your charges when you deal sword damage, when it's go time, really. And so guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at @RickKackis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.